I'm holding in my hands the American version of the British micro that got the British into micros in the first place. We'll look at this and other items next on this edition of Tech Throwback. Hello and welcome to another edition of Tech Throwback, the program that takes a look at techno trends from way back when. I'm your host, Bill Robert, and tonight we'll look at one of the smallest computers you'll ever see and also a game system from 1976. But first, let's kick up the drums and take a look at this week's piece of handy tech. Welcome back to the Tech Throwback Workshop, and today, as I promised, we're going to take a look at some drums, actually a small drum kit here. This is the Boss DR220, and it's actually a very small but programmable drum machine. Now, last time we did the little calculator keyboard thing, and this is to get numbers on keys, but this is no combo. This is an actual drum machine. It's a full set of drums. In fact, let's take a look at the white paper for this item. This is the Boss DR220 Dr. Rhythm. It was made by the Boss Corporation, who's now actually part of Roland. It was released in 1987, and at the time the list price was about $200. Now there were two variants of this. There was the DR220A, which featured acoustic drum samples, and then there was the DR220E, which featured electronic drum samples, more the Syndrum sounds you heard a lot of in the 80s pop music. In total there are 11 drum voices, and this one here we actually have the 220A, so I'll give you the drum voices for those. First of all, you've got your bass drum, your snare drum, then a closed and open hi-hat, rim shot, hand clap, then a crash cymbal, ride cymbal, and then three tom-toms, a high tom, a mid-tom, and a low tom. The buttons in the middle are used for programming sequences. You can actually have up to 64 patterns in this machine. That's what the memory is. 32 of them are actually pre-programmed, but 32 are user programmable, and you can make your own patterns in here. And then once you make your patterns, you can combine those patterns together into actual songs. Now this is the LCD screen that basically gives you all the information you need to know. It gives you a tempo, what bar you're in, what measure you're in, and also these are the buttons that handle the individual drum sounds. So you can either program the drums or just hit the buttons and play them like an actual live set of drums. On the side here you've got two outputs. You've got an output if you want to connect to an amp or a PA system, or if you have a set of headphones or a set of computer speakers, there's a smaller one there. It's a smaller 1/8" stereo connector. And then here you have a trigger in and out if you want to use it with some type of external triggering device. There's a jack here for an external power source if you want to get the optional DC adapter, and here's where you get the power switch. So we'll turn this on right now, and you'll notice the first thing is, you see right there, you've got the display lit up. Now, you're not going to hear anything. One of the drawbacks of this item is the fact that there is no onboard speaker. If you want to hear it, you actually have to plug it into something, be it a PA system or a speaker. Luckily, our director, Brian Jocelyn, lent us his computer speaker, so we're able to plug right in here. And we'll play around a little bit here with the Boss DR220. First of all, you notice there's a slide control down here. This is your volume control. Want to have that nice and loud. And we'll start. We won't do any programming or play any of the sequences yet. What we'll do is we'll just start with the actual manual pads and see what kind of sounds we get. We'll start with the toms first, the low tom. That shakes the room. Then the mid tom and the high tom. Or if you want to basically do a ride, and that's the crash cymbal right there. So it's pretty fun. Then you have your rim shot, just like hitting just right on the rim of the drum. Hand clap. And then your closed and open hi-hat. There we go, having a little fun there. And then you've got your bass drum and your snare drum. And finally, your ride cymbal. Yeah, you can tell I'm not a drummer. I'm actually a bass player. And if that sense of rhythm bodes anything for my bass playing, I'm in a lot of trouble. But anyway, so there we go. And that's just a quick... I really like the way that sounds. That really shakes the room here. I think Brian hooked up the sub too. This would be a good thing to have in my pocket anytime I tell jokes. Hey, hey, I just flew in from California. Boy, are my arms tired. Okay, enough of that. Let's take a look at the programming features now. This actually already has a pattern that is a default pattern that is loaded when you start it up, and we'll just hit the start button here. And you see how the display changes when it gets to different patterns. As I mentioned before, you can actually take multiple patterns and then combine them into one song. And there's a song write mode here. There's also a pattern write mode. And I won't go too much into that right now because some of that gets really esoteric. But what I will do is try to get you another item here. We'll start something else here. And we'll start with a mode change. Make sure you guys can see. There we go. And we'll do 21. And we'll play. Now this is just a pattern, this isn't a song. So it'll just continue like this in perpetuity. But then you can even add more to it. And then you can stop there. Or you can actually set it to so it'll play in perpetuity. When I originally had my first DR220 back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was actually using it as sort of a compositional tool, and nowadays I actually picked this one up and I'm using it mostly to act as a metronome or a rhythm box so that I can get my bass playing down to it, and basically rather than trying to play with a song or something, just play with a standard beat and work on how close you can get to those particular beats. By the way, the reason that these drum voices sound so good is because they're actual drums. They're actually sampled drums. It's not just some little drum synth. There's actually digital sounds that are kept in here, and those are the drum sounds. So that's why everything sounds so realistic. And that's the Boss DR220. I should say the DR220A Dr. Rhythm drum machine. Fun little device. I had one before. I have one now. I absolutely love it. It's a fun item and very helpful when you're learning to play an instrument and trying to get your timing down. Coming up next, something else I learned to do something on, the Timex Sinclair 1000, the little micro that put the power of computing within your reach for under $100. That's next. It is this week's Senior System. Hi, and welcome back to Tech Throwback. We're in the computer lab now, and today we're going to take a look at one of the smallest home computers you'll ever see. Of course, they did have smaller, what are called palm tops, things like the PC-1 and PC-2 put out by Radio Shack. But the one we're looking at right now is probably, as far as micros, it's one of the most microcomputers you'll see. In fact, it's, as we said in the outset of the show here, it's the British micro that got the British into micros. Huge number sold. And this is actually the American variant. The original one I'm talking about is the Sinclair ZX81, which was a huge success for the Sinclair Corporation. Later on, they went to put out things like the Spectrum and also the QL. But there was an American version of the Sinclair ZX81, and I have it right here. It is the Timex Sinclair 1000. And let's take a look at the capabilities of this thing on the Tech Throwback white paper. The Timex Sinclair 1000 was produced by Timex Computers and Sinclair Research. The product launched in 1982 and it retailed for $99.99. And on board the unit had 2 kilobytes of memory. That's all, 2K of RAM. You could add 16K of RAM though, with a RAM pack that would connect right to the back of the unit. The RAM pack retailed for $49.99. So technically it retailed for $99.99, but if you wanted to use a lot of the programs, you needed the 16K. So we're talking about $149.99, which at that point, still for a home computer, was a pretty low price. The CPU ran at 3.25 megahertz. The display was in black and white, 32 columns by 24 lines. It was the first available computer for the families under $100. And the amazing thing is, at a time where many motherboards for these computers had upwards of between 40 and 60 chips on it, the folks at Sinclair did this with only 4 chips on the motherboard. In addition to a RAM pack, Timex also offered a small optional thermal printer which connected to the back in line with the RAM pack. It was a small, looks like a ticket printer nowadays you'd see in a restaurant kitchen, and it worked just with the rolls of thermal paper. And as I mentioned before, it was based on Sinclair's ZX81. The main difference here, the ZX81 only had 1K of RAM on board. The stock TS1000 had 2K on board. Looking at the keyboard, it was small and it was actually a touch plate. It was a membrane keyboard, and each key had a number of different functions depending on whether or not you hit the key by itself, or whether you hit shift, or whether you hit function, or whether the cursor was in keyword mode or text mode. There were a number of different variables as far as the way this computer was used. And on the side here, we see the basic hookups. Really, all you had were 4 hookups Your power plug goes right here. After that, mic. Now that doesn't mean you put a mic into here. These really couldn't capture audio. This you connected to the mic input of the cassette recorder. This you connected to the earphone output of the cassette recorder, and then you connected this to the antenna in of your TV set. And on the back, that card edge right there, that's where you put the optional 16K RAM pack. As we open the box here, first thing you'll see, by the way, you won't see the computer here because obviously the computer's right here. But you see the box, and look at that. They even etched the Timex Sinclair 1000 logo into the foam, which is a nice touch. Once again, Clive Sinclair, the inventor of what this was based on, all about elegance. And in it, you got the RF cable, which actually I don't have in this particular box, but it came with a manual that not only showed you how to use the machine and how to hook it up, but also gave you sample basic programs to run as well. Also came with power supply, standard wall wart power supply. It came with a cassette cable basically that you needed to connect the cassette recorder to the unit, and then another one of these little adapter thingies here. Remember these? You basically connected this up to a TV with bare leads, connected your antenna here, plugged the computer in here, and used it to switch back and forth. And this wasn't even used because the double-sided tape, it still got the cover on it, so obviously that was never used. Still a little rusty, looking a little worse for wear, but obviously we're talking about a computer that's over 30 years old. So that was stuff you found in the box. Now, the RAM pack, let's take a look at that. Let me just put this away real quick. And let's take a look at the 16K RAM pack. And this is the optional RAM module that you could put on the back of the unit. It actually has its own model number 2. It's the Timex Sinclair 1016. And what you would do is literally just put it right on the back of the machine as like so, and there it would sit. And one of the problems people had with these machines, if you were starting to type on it, what would happen sometimes is it would shake the computer, and in doing so, this would dislodge and the computer would crash on you and you'd lose everything you were working on. So that was one of the design issues with the TS1000. So to get an idea of where we were then and where we are now, this was the 16K RAM module that you had once upon a time. This here brought you up to 16 kilobytes. This card here, this little micro SD, well actually it's just a standard SD card, this is 16 megabytes. So this little thing here carries 1,000 times what this carried. And then you have even more capability now in this package. So we're talking from this to this to this. And by the way, this technically isn't a 16, it's a 32 gigabyte card. But so think about that. You know, you're talking about, they've got 16 gigabyte, this is a 32 gigabyte, but you're talking 2,000 times what this holds on here. So, and compare this to this, forget it. But let's put all this stuff away and get set to set up and actually work with the Timex Sinclair 1000. And what I'll do for now is we'll hook it up without the RAM pack attached to it. To do a basic setup on the Timex Sinclair 1000, all you needed were 2 cords, the power cord and also the cord for the TV. So what we'll do is put this here and put this here, and then just change our source on our TV here, and there we go. And that's it. Now you notice right here that this cursor has a letter in it, and the cursor says K. K stands for keyword. So that means that anytime you see this, it's looking for one of the keywords at the top. So if you look at the keyboard real close, above all the letter keys are actual commands. So for instance, if you hit print, if you wanted to type out print, on most computers you type on P-R-I-N-T. On this here, you just hit the P, and boom, it already automatically puts print out for you. Now, the interesting thing about that is sometimes that can be a bit of an issue because of the fact that, so if you wanted to do what most people do using a computer, type everything in individually. If you want to type in print, well, you don't get print there, you get print rint, because that's the keyword. That's what happens when you hit P. And if you just go on typing, print rint. So obviously you don't want to do that. So you just have to delete that. But what we'll do here is this runs basic. So what we'll do is we'll just start a small program here, starting with, whoops, I just did it. Gonna make sure we go for the, there we go, clear screen, and then boom, actually, so we do that, and then it stores up there. So now 20, print, and we'll do our standard welcome screen here. And then close the quotes. And then line 30. Oops. Then just hit print, so it'll give us double spacing there, give us an extra line. Okay. So there we go, and it lists out everything for us at the top of the screens. Now all we have to do is, normally you type in run, but here we just, since it's working on keywords, once again you can see that K there, all you have to do is type the R key because the R key actually has the run command right over it. So just hit it, run, boom, and there you go. Welcome to Tech Throwback. Now, one of the things that Timex Sinclair did is they included a lot of software for the system. They had all types of titles you could buy. They were all on cassette. You couldn't load anything in from any other space. You didn't have anything for a disk drive to connect to. You couldn't hook in cartridge or anything like that. Everything had to be loaded in off cassettes. And the interesting thing is, as many games as they had the mixed game bag, the Challenger, States and Capitals, whoops, States and Capitals, things like this. But they also had a Super Math, nice educational program. But then they try to appeal to just more than just, a standard kids gaming educational market with programs like the loan mortgage amortizer, inventory control, and things like that, the budgeter, VU Calc, and also the checkbook manager. So really what they were trying to do is they were trying to appeal to all types of different groups when they put out this computer and included the software with it. In fact, let's bring out my trusty dusty cassette recorder here, and you'll notice, first of all, Timex Sinclair actually put out a small cassette recorder that you could put with this unit. They go right side by side. It was a smaller, more concise unit. The unit I have actually is a little bigger. As you can see, it's almost twice as big as the computer. But what we're going to do now is hook this in, and once again, the red is hooked to the earphone. So we hook it into earphone down here, and then we have the mic jack going here. And so now this is connected to the cassette recorder. So what we're going to do is go through some of these here and show you some of the programs that were available that you could run on the Timex Sinclair 1000. This is what you get actually when you're loading the program in off tape, because of the fact that I believe they use some of the same parts of the chip to have data come in off the tape that they used for video. So anytime you ran something in off the tape, the video went a little wacky there. But it was also a good way to tell that you were actually getting data to the machine. Sometimes people had the volume turned too low and it wouldn't load properly. Well, the loading has stopped. We typed in run, and this is what we got. This is actually a program. It's called Concentration, kind of like the old TV game show, although technically it's called Consent on the tape because you can only have up to an 8-character program name. And what this is this works a lot like the old Concentration game show where you basically pick a square and then pick another square, and it reveals, in this case, it reveals letters. And what you have to do is you have to remember which letters are where so you can match them up. So let's try this right now. We'll just go with A1. Now A1's a wild card. You see that little squiggle there, which means that anything I pick here is going to be a match. So let's go down here. Let's go to H8. Okay, and that shows as a match because this is a wild card and will work with anything. So let's try another one right now. Let's try C2. There's no method to this, by the way. I'm just doing this completely at random. And let's try F4. And that's a Y. Okay, so these will reset. And I'll go to E1 now. And that's a Q. We'll go to B7. Once again, just random. I'm guessing here that's an F. Okay. Let's go to H1. That's a B. Go to A6. Another wild card. So there we go. Normally you'd be matching letters, but I got lucky and hit a couple of wild cards here. So I could go through this whole thing, but it's going to take a while. And obviously, this being a TV show, we have a limited amount of time. And I do want to show you a couple of the other programs that you can put in the Timex Sinclair 1000. Well, it's all loaded up and ready to go. So we'll just pop this away here and get set to take a look at VU Calc. And starts out with your basic splash screen here. Enter E to enter view calc, C to continue, S to save, W to save. We'll want to go with E to enter. So we hit E and then enter. So there we go. Early spreadsheet program. F formula, L data, C calculate. We'll go right now with L data. I'll enter in 1, 2, 3, 4.56. And go to enter. And then go to A2. Invalid option, oops. We'll go with data once again. Okay. So as you can see, it works a lot like a spreadsheet program in that you basically can enter in data, you can enter in calculations, you can have it calculate things. So what you can do is set up a spreadsheet like you do these days in something like Excel, or even back in the day with Lotus 123, where you basically entered all your things in here, and then from there you could enter different variables and have it calculate things and set up spreadsheets for you. So one of the basic spreadsheet apps at the time. Of course, it's kind of hard getting the spreadsheet on the thermal printer, but nonetheless, an interesting program here for the TS1000. And let's take a look at one more basic program in this machine here. First of all, before we actually run it, let's just give you an idea of what some of the programming language looks like here. Let's see it in action. What do you know? That's our look at the Timex Sinclair 1000. By the way, if you're curious about this computer or any of the computers that we have here on Tech Throwback, you can visit our website at www.techthrowback.com. In addition, a lot of these computers have a great online community too. The Color Computer 3, which we did last time, they've got a great online community. There's a great online community for this one, the Timex Sinclair 1000, the MC10. You name the computer, there's a community out there somewhere for it. Google it on the internet, get the specific machine, and you'll be able to find some fun stuff. In fact, sometimes people even write their own games and port them up there, so you'll be amazed what you'll find. Anyway, for now, that's our look at the Timex Sinclair 1000. Coming up next, we're going to go over to the game room here on Tech Throwback. Back here in the Tech Throwback game room, and joining me is Don Laird from WCTV. Hi, Don.
Hello.
Today we're going to have some fun playing an old video game system from about 1976. That's when this one came out. It's the Radio Shack electronic TV scoreboard. I actually had one of these as a kid, although I didn't have the version with the gun. I had the one with just the 4 games and the blue paddles here. But this one is a 6-game unit. And here it is, the Radio Shack TV scoreboard unit. You had 6 games you could select from. You had Target, Skeet, those were both shooting games that were used with the gun. Also tennis, hockey, squash, and then practice, which basically was you and one paddle. Now the gun, we tried to get it to work with this TV, and I'm not sure if it's something where it needs to work with a CRT set or not, so we couldn't get either of the gun games to work, but we do have the other games we can show you here. Now the controls, basically, this is an oddity for game consoles, because not only is this the control part of the console, but also everything is on it. Normally you would have just the 2 joysticks, and then you have the main part of the console on the table. But here, the main part of the console is actually the paddle for the right player. And it's got the on-off switch, it's got the reset button, it's got the button to serve too when you're playing one of the racket games. Ball speed, you can change between fast and slow, small and large for bat size. So if you wanted to be really basic, you could do the slow ball speed with the large bat size. Or if you were really good at this, you could do the fast ball speed with the slow bat speed. Also, maximum and minimum slice, basically guaranteeing, or I should say governing the angles at which the ball goes back and forth between the 2 paddles. And then for the serve function, you can either manually serve using this button here, or you had the auto serve. And these are the buttons that did the paddles. Another interesting point of this game too is the game had no sound capability into the TV. The sounds basically came out of a speaker that was right on the back of the unit here. You've got the speaker here, you've also got the switch for the RF modulator for channel 2 or channel 3. In top there, this is the output cable, and this is where you plug the gun in. Actually, we're going to shut this off for a sec, because the gun, we weren't able to get it to work, so I won't even put it in there. But there we go, so it's on now. And the left player actually breaks off, so we'll stretch this out and give this to Don. And we'll start with a quick game of tennis. Tennis, anyone? Okay, so what you're going to do here is basically, you get up and down, let's hit reset here. And so we start, 0-0. And we'll start with the serve. So it goes to me, then to you, and 1. There we go. Whoop. Serve goes to Don. We're stuck in a loop thingy here. No, oh, there we go. Point goes to Don. I mean, this is really, as pongy as it gets. This is almost a direct takeoff on the Atari Pong game. So anyway, you get the general idea there. Let's switch over here and go to hockey now. Hockey, the main difference is you have the goals, but also you control two paddles. You've got the goalie, but then you've got the forward who's trying to tip the puck into the net. So we'll start here. First of all, we'll reset the score and start here. Goal! And what you're trying to do is trying to bat the puck back and forth with your forward piece, trying to get it past the goaltender there. Score! Nice job, Don. Now, that's hockey. And then you have squash. Basically, it's a racket game, but you're hitting it off the same wall. So now this is going to really be a bit of a cross-up because I've got the right player control, Don's got the left player control. But if you notice, my paddle is actually technically on the left, so that could get a little confusing here. So it's Don's turn to return it. Oh, or is it? Right through it. Went right through it. So, okay, it's yours now. Whoop. So now who's, okay, so that was actually my point. So now it goes to me, and actually Don's got to hit it first and I have to hit it back. Don's got to hit it now. There we go. And I hit it there. Don's turn. Whoops. There we go. So that's squash, and the practice is basically, it's just one player, and you're going back and forth. I mean, it's about all the permutations of the Pong concept you could get here. Just you've got tennis, which is basically Pong. Then you've got hockey, which is Pong with more walls and more paddles. And then squash, which is Pong, and you're all hitting it against the same wall. And then practice, which is basically one-man Pong. What I'm going to do is change a little bit here. We'll start with we'll change the slice. It's set to minimum. We'll change it to maximum right now. And you see how much different that is now? Boom. And you can go back down there. All right, now let's change the bat size. So we go with a smaller bat now. And now I can't hit a blessed thing. Here we go. So a small bat and maximum slice. This is going to be tricky. How can we make it even trickier? Ball speed. Let's speed up the ball. Whoa! Hello. Yeah, good luck with that. Cut to camera 3. And the winner on this one, TV Scoreboard, game, set, and match. And that'll finish out the game. It'll also finish out this episode of Tech Throwback. Don't forget to tune in next time when we take another look at the ways we used to compute and play back in the day. Thanks to my crew, and also thanks to you for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Tech Throwback.